I'm headed for the top. Yeah, I'm headed for the top. Yeah, I'm headed for the top. That's where you'll find me.
All right, I understand. Yes, it's another Game of the Year video, but you've already clicked it, so you might as well watch it all the way through, considering that you've already made the bad life decision to click this video. So with that in mind, I guess we'll... What's up, dorks? How's it going? You already know who it is. It's your favorite commentator's favorite commentator, your favorite YouTuber's favorite YouTuber, TitoKMF. And we're here once again, and it's the end of year 2022, and you already know what that means. It's time to come at you with a brand new video detailing my top 10 favorite games of the year. It's going to be an incredible time, but before we get into any of that, make sure you go ahead and like, subscribe, comment, so that way the algorithm, you know what I'm saying, does something for your boy. I really enjoy making these YouTube videos. I'm mainly a streamer. YouTube is where I do probably 90% of my content, but I do enjoy making these YouTube videos for you guys. So make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment, tell me your top 10 games of the year and all that. Additionally, I also have another channel directly for my D&D campaign, the RPG show. If you want to go ahead and check that out, the link will also be in the description below. It has the entirety of the campaign, me and a bunch of my friends playing D&D. It's gonna have a bunch of one-shots as well. So if you like D&D content, check out the RPG show on YouTube as well. All right, enough of that. Now, before we start, I think it's important to qualify myself. A lot of people make these games of the year. People are gonna be like, why didn't you play this? Or did you play that? Or whatever. Here's a list of every single game I played that released in 2022. Ready? Here it goes. Now, I did not play every game in its entirety, let's be clear, but every game I played at least 5 to 6 hours. I feel like that's enough play time to understand kind of the gist of the entirety of the game. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's kind of go over what qualifies the top 10, okay? Yes, quality, story, gameplay, pacing, visuals, music, all of that go into it. But the number one thing is, did I have fun? Did I have fun playing this game? And to be honest, I think that should kind of be the biggest factor when creating any list is, did I have a good time? Is it an enjoyable experience? So that's kind of the number one thing I'm factoring in when creating this list. Now, let's start with some kind of honorable mentions real quick, because I think it's important we get those out of the way immediately. So these are games that didn't quite make my top 10 for a variety of reasons, but I wanted to shout them out because I really, really enjoyed them, and I think it's worth a shot. So the first one actually is Marvel Snap. It hasn't been out that long, but it is by far the best digital CCG I've played since the original Hearthstone. It's super fun, and the reason being, it's because the studio is headed by the people who actually made the original Hearthstone. Connection? Anyone? Play it. It's really, really fun. It's really, really easy to get into. There's not a lot of microtransactions. There's a great progression system to get as many cards as you want by just putting the time in. And it's just a really, really fun game, especially if you like Marvel stuff. There's a lot of fantastic art in the game. So just go ahead and play it. It's really easy. Go ahead and do that. The second game is actually pretty out of left field for me. Maybe not something that a lot of people will kind of expect from me. For me, it's actually Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt. It's a very unique take on the BR genre. I'm not a big into like vampire stuff. It's not really a me thing. However, the movement, the environment, how you interact with the actual environment, the loot system, the actual gameplay of the game was really, really fun and unique. It always kind of felt like you were doing something that kind of made you stronger throughout the course of a particular game. So I loved it. You know, if you haven't played either of those games, go ahead and check them out. Marvel Snap, Vampire the Masquerade, Blood Hunt. Go ahead and check those games out. They're good. They're both free to play, so there you go. Especially, you know, if you're broke. Anyway, now that we have all the honorable mentions out of the way, it's time for us to actually begin. Here are my top 10 games for 2022. For number 10, we have Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Now, most, if not all, Kirby games are actually really good and really fun. So it was probably going to show up here sooner or later. But the thing about this Kirby game in particular that I found very enjoyable and that I loved was the actual world building and the visuals of the game. I thought the environments were really unique and engaging. The overall story was actually pretty good too, to finding out kind of what happened to the world and what happened to the characters in it. That was really, really cool. The enemies and bosses are fun, even though the character design I think is a little bit generic, but it's classic Kirby. There's not a lot of, at least for a lot of those types of characters, are very simple, but they're really cute and really adorable, really charming. The replayability of Kirby is also really, really high, kind of in every iteration, since there are so many collectibles. But for this particular game, it did get a little tedious in spots when you got to go back and collect kind of everything, especially if you're doing it as you go. It did feel a little bit tedious throughout the playthrough. Now, a standout for this game for me in terms of kind of my favorite parts of the game was actually the upgraded copy abilities and the preceding challenges to get those. To me, those are the best parts of the game that are kind of outside a lot of the end game stuff like that, the post game and the end game, which I think is really cool. And the battle arena is really, really good. But if I had to pick one, it would be all of those challenge missions to upgrade your particular power. Kirby and the Forgotten Land overall is a really great addition to the franchise. One of the highlights of the Nintendo Switch library, to be honest, and for me, it falls number 10 on my list. A game that kind of received a lot of really controversial reviews upon release, Gotham Knights was actually a standout to me this year, especially for its multiplayer experience. Driving around Gotham, and whether by yourself or with a friend or two, is super fun every time I did it. Completing missions, fighting bosses, finding loot just throughout even the world or even sub areas, completing a lot of the side stories or side missions was really fun. It was all in all a blast from a multiplayer perspective, and even running the game solo, the game felt very, very fun in a lot of instances. The game isn't perfect by any means. Obviously, there's some performance issues even playing on PC, which is what I did, but I do think the story itself about how each member of the Bat family kind of handles the death of Batman, I found it actually very compelling. Kind of seeing how each of them in their individual stories developed and branched, it was very, very unique. From Red Hood's kind of overwhelming guilt about his seemingly betrayal of Batman and kind of how he felt like a broken toy, to, you know, Nightwing Dick, he felt like he had this great weight on him to kind of live up to the name of Batman himself, to Tim, who really felt that he lost a father figure in a way, and Barbara, who kind of lost like her guiding hand in a lot after losing her father in this game, in this universe as well. She really felt that she was destined to prove herself in the eyes of Batman and was kind of looking for validation. All the stories were incredibly compelling to me. I played a majority of this game as Red Hood, which was really fun. The replayability is also nice because each member of the Bat family is very unique when it comes to gameplay. They don't play the same at all, so you can actually play through this game 4 times if you really wanted to, once with each character, or you can kind of switch between everyone, as there is the level scaling. When you switch from one character to the next, it kind of scales for you, which is great. The dynamic scaling as well between multiplayer was really, really good. If you're joining a party that is stronger than you, or you were stronger than them, it kind of scales so that way everyone has a good time. So what I was gonna say is, if you are going to play this game, grab it on sale and pick up a friend and play the entire game multiplayer, because that changes the entire experience of the game. Gotham Knights rather fits number 9 on my list. It was a fun time. Sifu. In short, this game's really, really cool, man. It checks every box of what you want from a hand-to-hand combat wish fulfillment kind of list. The story is cool, but it's actually not the main focus. Obviously, it is the gameplay in this kind of hand-to-hand martial arts, kung fu, Bruce Lee, Jet Li, roguelike experience. And this game really probably has some of the best pure gameplay of anything on this list. The death mechanic is really novel and really cool and really unique, but it's also just not there for show. It engages you and actually changes the way you play and how you approach certain solutions and other environmental kind of situations that you have throughout the game, different enemies, based off of your run and kind of how well you're doing. What age you are changes a lot of your moves as well, kind of the animations. The upgrade system throughout the run is great. It's a little confusing, to be quite honest with you, especially when you're first getting into the kind of upgrading system throughout. You grab one item later on, and then you come back and your one bosses immediately, you cut the level in half, and then after you cut the level in half, then eventually you can just go straight to the boss in all the instances, and you could just do kind of like a boss rush throughout the end. The upgrade system kind of mirrors that, where it's a lot of carrying over skills from run to run, but it can get a little bit, convoluted and not clearly explained early on. But once you get the hang of it, it's fine. It is not an easy game, and it takes a lot of skill that you kind of need to develop. And a lot of the skills from traditional fighting games, it kind of puts it into the roguelike format, which is great, and it actually works. So I would love to talk more about this game, but the best thing I can say to you is you just have to play it. Just play Sifu. It's really good. It's really fun, and it's not particularly full price $60 game, so it's worth it. Go play it. All right, so I guess this is like the roguelike section of the list, but sure. Cult of the Lamb. Cult of the Lamb really stands out because of two major things. Its presentation and its premise. The combination of combat broken up by this village management system makes the pacing of the game some of the best of any game this year. I mean, it always feels like you were doing something, whether you're going for a run and then you come back immediately and then you're managing your village, you're solving issues, you're doing little like interactions with your villagers. You're always doing something. It always feels like you are progressing, which is really, really important. Now, on launch, the Twitch integration was, wonky to say the least, but once it was up and running, it was really one of the best parts of the game. If there's additional content coming in 2023, I'm really looking forward to it. I have no idea, but I hope so. I'm very much looking forward to it if that is the case. But the actual combat of the game is actually probably some of my least favorite, to be honest. It's pretty standard. It's not that it's bad. It's just very roguelike. It's nothing particularly unique about the gameplay itself, but it's fun to do. Cult of the Lamb is essentially the sum of its parts, right? No individual part is really 10 out of 10 worthy, fantastic, super duper special, but when you combine it all together, the gameplay and combat, the great premise, the art design, the music, and you kind of wrap it up and present it all, it's presented as one of the best games of 2023. I really believe that. So Cult of the Lamb, go play it if you haven't. Go check it out. Yeah, I know you're probably like, yo, Tito, what is going on? Like, what? Mario Rabbids is 6? It's not even top 5? What the hell is going on? Let me explain. The sequel to one of my favorite Mario games, which is Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Crash, is Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope, and it's a very fulfilling sequel to its previous iteration. This expansive world, the NPCs are really cool, the character design, music is actually really good, the visuals are it's a beautiful game with a great, unique, that classic Nintendo kind of rounded art style that's charming and adorable. It kind of all brought me to just over around 30 hours of total gameplay. The voice acting in this game, as I've mentioned in another video, where I talk about kind of my overall thoughts of the game and even do a tier list, which can be found somewhere around here. The voice acting is atrocious at times, and it's really annoying and kind of cumbersome to the overall gameplay. But the gameplay loop itself is fun and engaging, right? The soundtrack was great, and the story, it's like predictable, and that's fine, but it was novel enough to kind of see the whole way through. You just kind of wanted to get to the end, right? Each world is full of a shit ton of collectibles. Like, it's so much, and it keeps you entertained almost the entirety of the game. It was really fun to kind of try to find the cast of 3 that fit not only the situation, but also your particular play style. Rabbid Mario is the best character in the game. I think it's Rabbid Mario. Rabbid Mario. Rabbid Mario. The humor in this game is actually surprisingly fun and charming and playful, and the Rabbid gags hit actually more often than not. The boss encounters were probably actually the weakest parts of the game, the fights I actually liked the least, but the overall game was very fun. But considering that the boss fights weren't great, the voice acting kind of got in the way, kind of made it annoying. And although I do think the gameplay is better than the original, I do actually think the first Mario Rabbids is a better game overall. Hopefully they do a third kind of iteration of this game and kind of being able to combine the things that worked from the first one to the second one, because the gameplay is better in the second one and everything else is probably better in the first one. So if they just combine everything, we'll be good to go. But for those reasons, it's just outside my top 5 at number 6, Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope. But I still think it's worth buying and still worth playing whenever you get a chance, because it's a really good 30 hours of gameplay and entertainment. Mario Rabbid has one good character, and it's Rabbid Mario. Now it's time we talk about that top 5 games of the year. So we start at number 5, which for me is Multiverses. The newest AAA platform fighter features characters from WB and probably going to be much more down the line. With a pretty healthy and diverse launch roster, the game is one of the most polished games on the market. Full stop. Continual support in the form of balance patches and content updates, as well as kind of amazing netcode, which doesn't get talked about a lot, and crossplay capabilities that just work. A Multiversus is one of the most well-rounded fighting games on the market. It is free to play, it is easy to get into, it looks really good. The game being centered around the 2v2 instead of the traditional 1v1 is a novel concept, but I can see why many people have not gotten into the game due to that, but also kind of the inherent mobility and style of mobility in the game I could see as pushing away people who like snappier movements and kind of more movement options in their fighters. I get it, but I've been playing this game since the first closed alpha, and this game has gotten exponentially better every time they've updated. The roster is always expanding, and although I haven't found a character other than Bugs that I really connect with, you know, I'm kind of still waiting on Samurai Jack, number 1, Mojo Jojo, like what are we, like, I'm just Johnny Bravo, like I'm just waiting. Look, I always dive back into the game whenever there's a new character, whether it's Black Adam or, you know, Marvin the Martian or something. It's a great game for casual players and has lots of layers for even competitive setting. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it is a fighting game. And due to it being a fighting game, the lack of kind of events or tournaments kind of tanks a lot of the community outreach and kind of makes it a little bit difficult to get into the game when it doesn't have a very vibrant, active, competitive scene. The game itself is fantastic, and it's most importantly, again, it's free to play, so play it. The music is mid, but play it. I promise it's a really high quality game. It's very, very fun to just kind of hop in and play a few games like anything else. So Multiversus, number 5 game of the year. Now, our last multiplayer game on this list, and actually by default, my top multiplayer game for 2022 is Rumbleverse. The pro wrestling inspired battle royale is literally everything I wanted from the genre and then some. Each game is engaging, not too time consuming, unique in its approach. As a pro wrestling fan, I will admit I'm biased. Most, if not all of it, is some of the most multiplayer fun I've had in years. Whether it was running solos or hitting up duo with a friend, shout out to Nukes, it's always been a blast every time I turn on the game. For a game that on surface would seem to be very simple, it actually has a lot of decision making during a game, whether it's deciding on which 2 moves you want to have, or what weapons or health items, or whether or not you want to carry weapons or healing in your inventory. But more than anything else, it's how you want to distribute your stats, right? Whether you want health, damage, or stamina, which kind of is the meter that you use for dodging, for running, for moves, etc. It's the kind of game when you don't know what to play, you play it. It's fun, reliable, easy to jump into, not too time consuming, and even more fun to play with friends. Rumbleverse by far is one of, if not my favorite multiplayer experience that I've had this year. So if you haven't tried it, go try it. It's really good. It's really fun. It's really charming. They're updating it all the time. Go play that. Do it. Go play it now. Do it. Do it. Wow. The unthinkable, the impossible, the improbable. A Pokemon game is in my top 3 games of the year. My number 3 game of the year is Pokemon Legends Arceus. It's my favorite Pokemon game outside of PMD, and for good reason. It completely shatters old traditions and conventions of previous Pokemon games that they've ever made, presenting new methods of exploration, battling, catching, and progression, whether that be mechanical or story. Instead of focusing on the same formula of get badges, save the world, this journey focuses on something else: the actual joy of collecting Pokemon. Completing the decks has never been more satisfying at all, ever. And as this game chooses to make Pokedex's completion a direct line of progression to the overall story. The boss battles in this game are all a delight, I found, and the catching in this game is fire. The battles themselves are kind of forgettable, but I'm actually okay with that because in this game, they're not even the real focus, right? I'd rather them have more impact if there's going to be way fewer of them, but that's totally fine. Since the real focus is catching exploration, I'm kind of okay being a little bit more lenient with how kind of forgettable most of the battles are. Now, it being on the kind of early 2000s Nokia brick that is the Nintendo Switch, there are obvious performance issues, some of them quite glaring. Like when a Pokemon is way too far out, they drop to like -8 FPS. It's just a real shit show sometimes, and that's fine. Nevertheless, I had fun the entire time. I had a blast during almost the entirety of the game and felt a need to 100% it, which was something that I haven't felt by almost any other game this year. It felt not tedious at all to 100% Pokemon Legends Arceus, and it felt rewarding to do so once I did. When you complete the decks, it's really rewarding, and the fight at the end is so much fun, and I don't want to spoil that for you, but go ahead and watch that. It's really fun, and I really hope they go back to this format and Pokemon Legends kind of becomes a staple spin-off franchise for the Pokemon Company, because this is a frame one buy for me every time. It is the only time a Pokemon game for me has ever made a top 10 game of the year for me, and it's actually in my top 3. So Pokemon Legends Arceus, good one. Wow, this was actually way more difficult than I thought. You think it would be a slam dunk for me, and although it kind of went the way that a lot of people are expecting, I want you guys to know that it was really close, like really close. But at the end of the day, my number 2 ranked game of the year for 2022 goes to Horizon Forbidden West. One of the largest jumps in quality from one game to its sequel that I've ever even heard of or seen. Literally everything about this game is better. Having played the original Horizon almost a month prior for the first time before I played Horizon Forbidden West, and jumping almost directly into Forbidden West, literally every single aspect of the game is better in Forbidden West. Gameplay, story, visuals, music, the upgrade system, the character development, the writing, the voice acting. The entirety of this game is a step up from its predecessor. Like, full stop. This is one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. And to be honest, it has some of the most beautiful, like, kind of landscapes and kind of huge, like, shots, like visual shots of any game on this list. I actually think it's the best looking game on this list. I could go crazy about any aspect of this game, but one of the biggest selling points is like it was on the PS5, and now I have like a reason to like turn it on every now and then to play more Horizon. The music was fantastic, the combat was engaging and fun, but also allowed for a personal playstyle to allow you to kind of impact how Aloy plays. The overall story comes to a pretty satisfying conclusion where multiple characters have real emotional moments with each other that hit home for me. Aloy herself goes through a lot in this game, and the progression of not only finding out about her past but also exploring her relationship with all the other characters, I found fascinating more than almost any other story of characters that I found this year. The environments were expansive and vibrant and unique, and traversing them was a joy every time, and it never felt tedious at any point to go from point A to point B. Horizon Forbidden West became not only one of my favorite games of 2022, but one of my favorite single-player experiences of my life. I really love this game. It's definitely up there for me in terms of my top games of all time, personally. Just not really in terms of quality or things like that, but more in terms of games that I've played. Forbidden West is great. So I know it gets overshadowed by a lot of other games that came out this year, 2 in particular, but if you haven't, I highly recommend Horizon Forbidden West. And you all know this was coming, so don't act surprised. My number 1 game of the year 2022 is God of War Ragnarok. It's one of the things that it's everything I wanted from the first God of War in 2018. It concluded a lot. It tied a bow on pretty much almost all of the things that I can think of off the top of my head. The gameplay is better in this game than it was in the previous iteration. The story, although it's pretty back heavy, the beginning of the game, there's a lot of exposition and a lot of kind of setting up, because obviously, not a spoiler, Ragnarok happens, but that's in the last half of the game. And the first half of the game is a lot of like setup, which can kind of feel a little bit tedious, where it felt like in the first game the pacing was a little bit more uniform. It felt like beats were happening throughout the entirety of the game that made the game feel a little bit more like it had a lot more flow points between story point to story point, while this game really sets up everything for its last half in its last couple of acts. So I can understand people not necessarily liking that. I kind of treat this as kind of like the second half of a really long movie. Just Kratos is one of the greatest video game characters of all time. From a character perspective, from a design perspective, from a lore perspective, literally all around, Kratos is just really up there in terms of one of the all-time great video game characters ever made or designed. And I think this game solidifies that, especially with how that whole entirety of the back half of the game kind of concludes. If you want to see more in-depth thoughts about kind of especially my initial reaction right after completing the game, I have another YouTube video on that on my channel. It's going to be like right here, so you can go watch that. But I don't really want to talk too much about this game because, again, a lot of this game comes from the fact that you should experience it yourself, especially the story beats. Kind of difficult to talk about the game, but just know it's a gorgeous game. Everything you've heard about the game from all kind of like that positive, that great review section is true. So I highly suggest you go play the game. It's everything I wanted, and it's one of the very few games where I got like emotional at the end. I don't really get emotional at games or really any kind of medium kind of visual media that much at all, but this kind of game, especially the very, very end, it's a lot and it's great. It's beautiful. So go check it out, God of War Ragnarok. So that's it. Those are my top 10 games of 2022. This was actually a very good year for video games. A lot of stuff, a lot of really great stuff came out. I know there are some things that you were probably expecting more on this list. Either I didn't think it was good or I didn't like it, so that's why it's not on here. The big thing is like, oh, where's Elden Ring? I don't like Elden Ring. I played 6 hours of it. I didn't like it. And it's my list. I didn't like it. You can like it, but to me it was boring. I don't know what to tell you. It just was. Like it was just not fun. But other than that, there was a lot of really great games this year. I played a lot of stuff this year, more so than I have in years past, which is why I really thought that making a top 10 list this year, which is something I don't normally do, was fitting. 2023 is going to be a huge year for fighting games, so hopefully, that's going to be riddled in my 2023 list. But also a lot of really good games I'm looking forward to, like Spider-Man's coming out next year. So I'm really, really excited for that. I'm just looking forward to, those really large cinematic experiences, those single player experiences, kind of where I anchor a lot of my visual, kind of where I lean towards in terms of visual media, those story driven stuff. So Final Fantasy 16 I'm looking forward to, Spider-Man 2 I'm looking forward to, those types of games as well as all the fighting games coming out next year. So what is your top 10, your top 3, your best game, your favorite game, your most hated game? What do you think about my list? All that stuff, put it in the comments below. I really hope you guys have an amazing year. I hope you guys had an amazing 2022, and yeah, man, 2023 is going to be even better, hopefully, for all of us. I want to make sure that you go ahead and follow me here, subscribe here, and follow me on Twitch, because that's where all of this stuff that I'm going to be playing will be played, and you guys can see me live play through all of that. So again, appreciate all of you, and that's the end of this video. So hope you don't regret your life decisions. So now go outside, drink some water.